Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are setting sail, literally, right into the heart of an absolute classic. We're talking about the ultimate coming-of-age story, a tale just totally packed with dangerous buccaneers, treacherous mutinies, and, of course, buried gold. I'm talking about Robert Louis Stevenson's masterpiece, Treasure Island. We're going to unpack exactly how this single 19th century novel permanently shaped our imaginations.
But hey, before we even get into the plot, do me a favor. Picture a pirate in your head right now. Just close your eyes for a second and imagine one. What do they look like? Where are they standing? It's almost guaranteed that the image you just conjured didn't come from the actual history books. It came from the very novel we are dissecting today. We often take these cultural visuals for granted, but, they had to start somewhere, right? So let's dive right into this. Those pop culture pirate tropes we all know and love, deserted tropical islands, weathered treasure maps famously marked with a giant X, and grizzled one-legged seamen with parrots perched on their shoulders, literally all of these originated from Stevenson's novel. It is kind of incredible to think that Treasure Island single-handedly forged the blueprint for how we depict pirates in popular culture today. To really grasp the impact of this story, we've got to look at its origins. Surprisingly, it wasn't originally called Treasure Island at all. It was initially serialized between 1881 and 1882 in a children's magazine called Young Folks. Back then, it went by the title The Sea Cook, a story for boys, and was written under the pseudonym Captain George North. It actually wasn't until November 14, 1883, that it was published as the book we know today. Set in the 18th century, it's pretty much the ultimate coming-of-age story for its young protagonist, noted for its incredibly thick atmosphere and just non-stop action. Right from the jump, the story introduces this sheer sense of dread. There's this chilling warning given by a terrifying old sailor who just calls himself the captain. He's staying at the Royal Admiral Benbow Inn near Bristol. Basically, he spends his days looking out at the sea with a spyglass and his nights terrifying the inn's guests with wild sea stories. He gives this specific, super ominous warning to the innkeeper's young son, Jim Hawkins, and it sets a brilliant tone of impending danger. And man, that dread boils over into absolute chaos really fast. Just look at how quickly this adventure kicks off. The captain turns out to be a former pirate named Billy Bones. First, a rogue named Black Dog confronts Bones over some mysterious chart, which ends in a violent cutlass fight. That very night, tragedy strikes Jim's family. His father dies from poor health. Then, just days later, a terrifying blind beggar and former pirate named Pew arrives to deliver something called the Black Spot to Bones. The shock causes Bones to immediately drop dead of a stroke. Shortly after that, Pew and his crew attack the inn, but they're routed by mounted officers, and Pew gets brutally trampled to death. Stevenson condenses a massive amount of thrilling plot into just a handful of days. Now, I want to pause for a second on a term I just threw out there, the Black Spot. This is another massive contribution to pirate lore. It's a physical summons, basically a terrifying judgment delivered by pirates to one of their own. It meant your time was up and your former crewmates were coming for you. Just the simple act of receiving this little piece of paper was enough to trigger Billy Bones' fatal stroke. It's such a brilliant narrative device to show the ruthless code these outlaws lived by. So amidst this violent raid on the inn, Jim and his mom narrowly escape. But right before they flee, they grab a packet out of Billy Bones' sea chest. And inside this packet is the catalyst for the entire journey, a map. But not just any map, a chart showing the exact location of an island where the infamous, legendary pirate Captain Flint hid his massive treasure. Realizing exactly what he has, Jim takes this map to the local gentry, the physician Dr. Livesey and Squire Trelawney, who immediately decide, yep, we're funding an expedition to find this gold. So they charter a schooner called the Hispaniola out of Bristol and put together a crew. We've got our organizers, Livesey and Trelawney. They hire the very strict Captain Alexander Smollett to command the vessel, and young Jim Hawkins signs on as the cabin boy. But you got to pay attention to the ship's cook here, Long John Silver. He's a one-legged man whom Jim immediately forms a really strong, almost father-son bond with during the voyage. Remember that warning from Billy Bones? Yeah, Jim completely misses the connection because Silver is just so charismatic and helpful. But, as you might guess, the voyage is far from smooth sailing. The first mate actually washes overboard in a storm, and tension starts simmering under the surface. Then, we get one of the most suspenseful scenes in literary history. Late one night, Jim climbs into a nearly empty apple barrel on the deck to grab a snack. While hidden inside, he overhears a terrifying conversation. He realizes that a huge portion of the crew, led by his good friend Long John Silver, well, they're actually former members of Captain Flint's pirate gang. And Silver, he doesn't just want to hijack the ship right then and there. He is coldly calculating. His brutal plan is to let the loyal crew members do all the hard work of salvaging the treasure. Once the gold is safely on board, he intends to execute a bloody mutiny and literally murder Captain Smollett, Trelawney, Livesey, and anyone else who refuses to join them. Jim is terrified, obviously, but he's resourceful, so he secretly reports this plot to the captain and the organizers. Once Jim actually witnesses Silver cold-bloodedly murder a loyal sailor on the beach, the mutiny officially kicks off. We are left with a dire standoff between two distinct factions. Captain Smollett's loyal band is forced to flee the Hispaniola and take refuge in this decaying, abandoned stockade on the island. On the flip side, we have Long John Silver's mutineers, heavily armed, holding the ship, and vastly outnumbering the Loyalists. It's just a classic high-stakes siege scenario. Meanwhile, while fleeing from that horrific murder on the beach, Jim runs deep into the jungle. And this is where he encounters one of the story's wildest wildcards, Ben Gunn. Ben is this deeply eccentric guy who has been marooned on the island for 3 years. Crucially, he's also a former member of Captain Flint's crew. He's been surviving on goat meat and berries, and he's absolutely desperate for a piece of cheese. He basically represents the living ghost of the island's dark past. Back at the stockade, it's under heavy attack and casualties are mounting. This is really Jim's defining coming-of-age moment. He takes matters into his own hands in this rapid-fire sequence of heroism. He sneaks out, grabs a small boat, and cuts the Hispaniola from its anchor. He drifts the massive ship along the ebb tide, boards it, and faces off against this incredibly dangerous pirate named Israel Hands. When Hands tries to kill him with a dagger, Jim shoots him dead with 2 pistols. Finally, Jim successfully beaches the schooner in a hidden northern bay, effectively stealing the pirates' only way home. So, feeling pretty triumphant, Jim navigates his way back through the dark jungle to the stockade to tell his friends the good news. But when he slips inside, he's completely horrified to discover the men sleeping there aren't his friends at all. It's Long John Silver and the mutineers. Silver explains that when the ship mysteriously vanished, Smollett's besieged party agreed to an unsettling truce. The Loyalists completely surrendered the stockade and, shockingly, handed over the treasure map, just so they could leave safely. Now that Silver has the map, he and his mutineers force Jim to march with them into the jungle to dig up the gold. And the vibe here gets incredibly eerie. Shadows stretch along over the island as they find a gruesome marker along the path, a human skeleton laid out with its arms pointing directly toward the treasure site. It was a sick joke left behind by Captain Flint. To make matters worse, the superstitious pirates are terrified when a disembodied voice starts echoing through the misty forest, screaming Flint's last words. It's actually just Ben Gunn messing with them, but the pirates are 100% convinced the island is haunted by Flint's ghost. But, despite their absolute terror, pure greed pushes them forward. They follow the map, they follow the creepy skeletal pointer, and they finally arrive at the legendary coordinates of Captain Flint's massive treasure cache. They look down into the excavated earth, and what do they find? 0. Nothing. The entire cache has been dug out, and the gold is completely gone. Obviously, the pirates are enraged. They immediately turn to murder Silver and Jim on the spot. But right before they can strike, Dr. Livesey's loyal party, alongside Ben Gunn, burst from the trees and ambushes them in this brilliant, triumphant rescue. And this is when the master plan is finally revealed. The reason Smollett surrendered the map so easily earlier, it was already useless. During his 3 years marooned on the island, Ben Gunn had stumbled upon the site, dug up the bulk of the treasure himself, and safely moved all the gold over to his hidden cave. From there, the story basically races to its conclusion. The loyal crew members quickly head over to Ben Gunn's cave, where they spend days loading this massive fortune onto the Hispaniola. The surviving mutineers are given a taste of their own medicine and marooned on the island with a few supplies. Long John Silver is taken aboard as a prisoner, destined for the gallows. But, Silver is cunning to the very end. At their first port in Spanish America, he manages to steal a bag of coins and just slips away into the night, never to be seen again. The rest of the crew sails back to Bristol and divides up the immense wealth. But here is the really fascinating detail Stevenson leaves us with at the end of the novel. Not all the treasure was recovered. There is still silver and arms buried deep on that island. Yet, despite the unbelievable riches left behind, an older Jim Hawkins plainly states he will never, ever return to that accursed place. He's still haunted by the lingering trauma and the memories of the blood spilled in the sand. So, after walking through this intense blueprint of modern pirate lore, I want to leave you with a final thought. If you knew there was still unrecovered pirate gold out there, would you dare return to look for